Released by Square Enix in 2006 on the PlayStation 2, director Hiroyuki Ito, who also directed Final Fantasy 6 and 9, with first-time director Hiroshi Minagawa, who helped with the Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant story games, cooperate to create another installment in the Evil East universe, after the original director had to step down during the project due to an illness. Set in the same universe but not world as Final Fantasy Tactics trilogy and Vagrant story, it is also built using the same engine as the MMO Final Fantasy XI, though adjusted for a single-player experience. It features a 2-scale open world with immediate freedom to nearly everywhere, making it the largest and most non-linear adventure in the main series to date, with enriching features like dynamic weather and monster spawn cycles. For characters, per Ito's style, it features a group of 6 individuals with their own stories and no actual main protagonist, though it is often told from the perspective of Vaan more often than not. Each character levels up traditionally and is customized by the player using a licensed board system, which is a non-linear version of 10's sphere grid system. Mechanically, it is the only main installment with seamless transition from encounter to combat, so everything is real-time. As such, the player therefore only actually controls one character at a time, though they can transition who they play as in the team and leave everyone else to the customizable AI programming system called the Gambit system. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with a recapitation. Set in the world of Evil East, a magic-rich world with many races, the city-state of Dalmasca is celebrating the marriage of its own Princess Ashe and Prince Rassler of Nebradia in Dalmasca's capital city, Rabanastre. Unfortunately, weeks later, the much larger Empire of Arcadia chooses to invade Nebradia as part of its war march westward. Soon, Nebradia's capital city of Nabudis falls, and at this time, Dalmasca's king Ramenas chooses to aid their new allies and counterattack the invaders' advance at Nalvina Fortress. Dalmasca's captain of the Knights Bosch mobilizes immediately, and Lord Rassler volunteers as well. Rassler leads the army in the defense of the fortress, but the Arcadian invaders prove overwhelming. As their last line of defense falls, Rassler takes an arrow to the neck, and Bosch just manages to disengage with him in hand. Unfortunately, Rassler does not survive the wound, and Nebradia falls under the Arcadian tide. In the bigger picture, the Empire of Arcadia is really at war with the Empire of Rosaria to the west, and the smaller and recently allied city-states of Dalmasca and Nebradia are just 2 victims on the border and in the way of these 2 giant nations fighting. With Nebradia and most of Dalmasca's forces falling at the Battle of Nalvina Fortress, Dalmasca is now very vulnerable before Arcadia. Knowing this, Arcadia allows Dalmasca to surrender peacefully and set terms. Later, Dalmasca's king Ramenas arrives at the fallen Nalvina Fortress to sign the Empire's peace treaty, and a young soldier named Rex is awoken by an on-site Captain Bosch and a small contingent of knights, including Captain Vossler as Ellis. Bosch and the remainder of the knights are still picking themselves up as he helps along Rex. Rex believes he is helping rescue the king from the Empire, but as he catches up, he sees everyone in the treaty room murdered, including King Ramenas. He is abruptly stabbed by Bosch, who calls out the king as traitor for signing control of Dalmasca over to Arcadia. However, as he passes out, Rex witnesses Bosch get captured by Vayne Solidor, 3rd son of the Arcadian Emperor, and he passes out thinking of his younger brother Vaan. As these events transpire, they are recorded by Marquis Andor, friend of King Ramenas, who also reports Princess Ashe's grief-stricken suicide. In addition, Captain Bosch was executed on charges of high treason, sedition, and assassination. As a result, Dalmasca was to surrender without terms. 2 years pass as we see Vaan, orphaned younger brother of Rex, surviving on the streets of Dalmasca's capital city, Rabanastre. He makes a living with petty theft as he lives alongside another war-orphan friend, Penelo, who urges him to get on by straight work as she does. Personally, Vaan has a dream of being a sky pirate with his own airship one day. To make ends meet, he even opts to take bounties and jobs off a billboard, and during one job, he finds some Galbana lilies that he finds particularly precious. Later in the day, there is a parade for the appointment of a new consul for Rabanastre, Vayne Solidor, and he quickly wins the frustrated people over with a compassionate and inspiring words. Vaan still harbors resentment for the Arcadian Empire, and so plans that night to sneak in the castle during the banquet and loot their treasure room. As Vaan obtains a means in by way of the Garum Scythe waterways underground, there is actually another group at play, a resistance group including former Captain Azelis and another woman. At the same time, an elite duo composed of a distinguished man and co-pilot Vieira dash into the castle grounds on their jet bike. Vaan navigates his way successfully to the treasure room with his acquired knowledge of the castle's secret passageways, and as he is looting, he accidentally uncovers a large chunk of valuable nethicite. At the same time, the duo corners him for the precise piece of nethicite he's holding. When the sounds of a fight breaking out distracts the duo, Vaan gives the duo the slip and finds the resistance group engaging the Empire's guards. As a nearby battleship is conveniently nearby to suppress the threat with its cannons, much to the rogue's suspicion, he chooses to help out Vaan as they are all spotted by the alerted guards. The Vieira notes their hoverbike is somehow losing power rapidly, and they crash nearby the waterways, opting to take that as their way out. The man introduces his partner as Fran of the Viera, a race of bunny women, and himself as Balthier, the sky pirate. He takes command of the situation to ensure they all survive, and they form a temporary alliance. Balthier deduces the consul knew there would be an attempt on his life by insurgents and thus appeared to have a light guard about, but in reality had heavy backup close by, thus snuffing out hiding rebels. As they make their way out, they encounter the woman leading the resistance and Vaughn chooses to help her out. The woman introduces herself as Amalia, and while she opts to accompany them only for their escape, Vaughn notes his nethicite chunk illuminates once more. Though they beat away a menacing flan monster, they soon walk into a trap that even Consul Vane was personally present for. As they are arrested and hauled off, Balthier smoothly drops a handkerchief in the hand of a protesting Penelo for safekeeping. Vaughn has a flashback of visiting his brother Rex with his favorite Galvana Lilies, who was mentally broken and hospitalized, and bearing the stigma of being accomplice to the king's murder. Vaughn believes his brother innocent and merely tricked by Captain Bosch, but Rex died, leaving only his signet ring behind. He wakes up to find himself, Balthier, and Fran tossed into the dungeon of Nabina Fortress. Vaughn quickly gets into trouble with some of the other prisoners, and a trio of Sikhs, a race of horned pigmen, encroach upon him until Balthier jumps in to bail him out of a rough fight. A group of soldiers come in to escort in the headhunter Bagamnan of the Banga race of lizardmen, hot on the trail of Balthier. As Fran leads them out to their escape route, a judge now makes his entrance, and Balthier explains they are the authoritarian law enforcers of Arcadia, and elite guards in the House of Solidor, which basically makes them commanders of the Imperial Army. The judge is actually just passing through en route to another prisoner, and makes his way as Bagamnan resumes his hunt for Balthier. Balthier decides to reverse the situation and take advantage of the judge's access and let him open doors for them. Their payoff is immediate as they find the room with their confiscated gear, and still manage to stay a few steps behind the judge. Trailing the judge brings them to his quarry, which is Captain Bosch, who is actually alive after all, despite the public report of his execution. The judge unmasks himself to reveal he is Bosch's twin brother, and it's revealed that Bosch is kept alive in the Empire's dungeon as blackmail for Marquis Andor's silence and cooperation, though even the judge does not know why specifically. The judge asks who Amalia's real identity is, but Bosch refuses to answer. As the judge leaves, Balthier steps out, and Fran indicates that she, sensitive to an ether called Mist, senses they're an exit if they follow the Mist Trail through here. Bosch beseeches them to release him, but Balthier hears none of it. However, Vaughn takes the opportunity to vent his frustrations and blames brother's death and this kingdom's problems on Bosch. His ruckus alerts the judge and guards back their way, and Fran quickly decides to drop Bosch's cage, and they all ride it down to the depths of the dungeon. Always the opportunist, Balthier decides that since Bosch is free, he might as well be useful, and lend them his sword arm, which Bosch firmly agrees to, much to Vaughn's ire. As they get Bosch geared up, Vaughn repeats that his brother saw Bosch kill the king, and Bosch recalls that he must mean Rex. Vaughn accuses him of Rex's death too, but Bosch swears it wasn't him. As incredible as it sounds, he explains it was his twin brother, Gabranth, that committed all of those deeds and framed him for it. Balthier believes the story fits, but Vaughn still isn't convinced. Banding together to defeat a queen mimic, they secure a way out through an old tunnel where Bosch insists he is still a knight loyal to the throne of Robin Aster, and leaves to join the resistance. Balthier and Fran go on their separate way too, and Vaughn decides he needs to offload his nethicite quickly. He looks for Penelo to let him know he's okay, but she's nowhere to be found. Next, he shows his treasure to Dalen, the information broker who showed him the secret passageways around the castle in the first place, and Dalen now tasks him to deliver a sword of the Old Knight's Order to a zealous for him. Vaughn now finds himself again in the Order's resistance group, where the old soldiers don't know what to think of Bosch's survival and claim that a judge killed the old king. Bosch explains to all that Rex was set up as a witness to cement the claim that Bosch killed the king, so Rex is not a liar, which gives Vaughn something to think about. Azella still doesn't trust Bosch, and now Marquis Andor, but will let him pursue his mission to protect Amalia. Bosch asks Vaughn to take him to Balthier, as he needs a sky pirate to fly him somewhere, and as they talk, Vaughn now firmly believes it wasn't Bosch who killed his brother, but rather the Empire. As they find Balthier, they find out Penelo's been taken hostage in the Bujerba mines, demanding Balthier's arrival. As Fran figures, an obvious trap by Bagamnan. Vaughn jumps to Penelo's rescue, offering the nethicite as payment to fly him to the sky city of Bujerba. Bujerba happens to be where Bosch is going to, though to speak with its ruler Marquis Andor, so the group reunites and moves on. Vaughn is enamored with Balthier's airship, the Strahl, and is bounding with questions for the Sky Pirate. For some reason, Marquis Andor gained favor with the Empire when Princess Ash and Captain Bosch were purportedly killed, and Bosch wants to know why. As the Strahl takes flight, Penelo was indeed captured by Bagamnan, who mistakes her for Balthier's mistress. It isn't long before they arrive at the sky city of Bujerba, though the note directs them to the Lusu mines. They are overheard by a young boy who asks to tag along with some business of his own in the mines, and Balthier allows him along too. The boy introduces himself as Lamont, and though Balthier and Bosch groan when Vaughn lets slip their real names, they are both curious how Lamont knows so much about the Imperial Army and politics. As they spy on, they see another judge talking with Marquis Andor, who apparently was at the Dalmascan king's surrender as the mediator, though after the murder fell in line with serving the Empire, even though rumors say he still helps the Resistance. As they journey further in the mines, Lamont stops for the real reason he's here, and that is to observe the Nethicite, a crystal ore that absorbs magic. Apparently, this mine is where Draklor Lab, where Nethicite is being artificially made, is coming from. Balthier suddenly hard-presses Lamont with some direct questioning, but they are interrupted by Begannon. Lamont makes a run for it, and the group soon behind, leaving the headhunters in their dust. Tailing Lamont, he returns to the judge they saw earlier, Judge Geese, and his real identity as the young Lord Larsa comes out. Penelo was captured by Judge Geese in the mines right from being kidnapped, but Larsa accompanies her to the Marquis's home. Balthier then specifies that he's Larsa Solidor, the fourth son to Emperor Gramis, and younger brother to Consul Vane. Seeing the Marquis host the Empire, they choose to root out Bujerba's resistance by refuting Andor's claims of Bosch's death. Vaughn goes around town making a clamor, and they attract the attention of this town's resistance movement. One of Andor's guardians, of the Catman race called the Rev, arranges a meeting for Bosch with Andor, and when they talk, Bosch understands that while his very existence threatens Andor's standing with the Empire, he still needs his help to rescue Amalia. Also, Penelo, though in good care of Larsa, was still taken back to the Empire. Finally, Andor chooses not to negotiate and captures Bosch for the Empire, though gives him to Judge Geese and not Vane, who was holding Bosch over his head. As Vane receives word of this, he meets with Dr. Sid, a renowned scientist in the Empire, who also seems to be talking to a mysterious shadow. Meanwhile, the group is in chains again, as this time they are transported to the airship dreadnought Leviathan. Within, they find Amalia, who is less than thrilled to see her father's alleged killer, and it's revealed that she's really Princess Ash. However, because she bears no royal proof of her claimed identity, she is to be executed for that. Bosch interjects that the Dusk Shard can verify those of royal blood and knows where it's located, so they should not kill her, but suddenly the Magicite Shard of Vaughn glows again, and it turns out that is the Dusk Shard. Unfortunately, he is forced to hand it over to Judge Geese, even though he himself does not know what it is. They defeat their guard escort, with one of them being Captain Azelis in disguise, who is never far from Ash, and he requests their help to free the princess. As they all escape, they run into Larsa, who returns Penelo back to Vaughn, and says he'll help them, if only to find out how far this no-good plot unravels, for the sake of both of their countries. He hands Penelo a piece of Nethicite and takes Captain Azelis with him to secure an escape route for them. In the hangar, however, Judge Geese stands ready and blasts them all with magic, though Larsa's Nethicite does indeed absorb the full effect. They fight and beat the judge, and secure a skiff to flee the Leviathan, returning to Bujerba. They talk heatedly with Andor, who realizes Vane was playing them against each other this whole time since the assassination, but cannot aid Ash, as even if they beat Vane, she won't be placed as heir without proper proof of sovereignty. Thinking to obtain the Dawn Shard, which will validate her royal blood, Ash moves to steal Balthier's ship, but she's caught by both Vaughn and the Sky Pirate. Undeterred, she offers them the Dynast King's treasure, as the Dawn Shard she seeks is but one relic in King Wraithwall's tomb, where they must take her. Naturally, Bosch follows Ash, Fran with Balthier, and Penelo with Vaughn, so they are banded once more as they head off to King Wraithwall's tomb. Meanwhile, in the city of Arcades, the capital of Arcadia, Judge Gabranth reports to the Emperor himself on Dr. Sid and his activities with Vane, whom is also tied to the fall of Nabudis, though there is still the issue of Judge Zek that went missing there. This all matters as the Emperor is deathly ill and a successor must be chosen soon. The Senate of Arcadia actually fears Vane, and the Emperor himself is actually leaning more towards Larsa as the next Emperor. Though, to ensure Larsa's safety, he asks Gabranth to keep Larsa safe, especially from his older brother Vane, whom Gabranth is now serving and whom Larsa innocently idolizes. Back with the group, they fly to the edge of the Yacht, a land thick with mist that prevents airships from flying within, and thus make their way to the tomb on foot across the Obir Yenza sand sea, quite literally a flowing sea of sand. As they cross westward across the abandoned oil rigs that bridge the Sand Sea, which are a part of the Rosarian Empire, they are met by Vossler as he chases them down. However, this Sand Sea territory here has long been claimed by the Uritan Nyenza, a goblin-like tribe of desert-faring raiders. Crossing that and the desert beyond, they find the tomb as well as defeat their guardian to gain entry. Ash explains King Wraithwall handed down 3 relics to his straight descendants, the Midlight Shard to House Nabradia, the Dusk Shard to her own ancestors in Dalmasca, and the Dawn Shard, hidden here in his tomb for any of royal blood. As they survive the beasts and traps within, they note the mist is so thick in here that it's even visible to the eye. While it inherently garners stronger, more dangerous monsters, it also supercharges their own magics. They encounter a unique being, the Esper Bellius, who once was a thrall to King Wraithwall and bound in servitude to those who could defeat it. Doing so, they gain the actual treasure of the Dynast King, and beyond is the Dawn Shard. As she claims the Dawn Shard, Ash suddenly sees the ghost of Rassler, and somehow Vaughn does too. However, as soon as they leave, Judge Geese and the Leviathan are waiting outside for them. He demands a nethicite, but not the artificial one Larsa gave to Penelo, and they learn Vossler has sold them all out. In exchange for the Dawn Shard, Ash will be permitted to reclaim the throne, and the Kingdom of Damaska will be restored, though still under the Empire's rule. He holds her companions at sword point to hurry the decision, and Ash submits. Judge Geese says this day-affected nethicite will be going to Dr. Sid, and he has it tested for authenticity immediately. The rapid release of mist during the testing drives Fran feral, and during the distraction they overwhelm the guards, though Vossler seeks to stand in their way. As they overpower him and make their escape, the Dawn Shard begins draining all of the power of the Leviathan, and then crushing the entire ship under its power. As the Dreadnought explodes, the manifested mist destroys the entire fleet at once, and the party only barely escapes. After things calm down, the Dawn Shard is seen still hovering in the middle of it, so they circle around and claim it. In the wake of the calamity, Marquis Ondor steps down from his position and begins work on unifying the scattered anti-imperial forces across the kingdom. In addition, the Rosaria Empire has noticed and begun stirring, which makes the Arcadian Senate nervous and eager to pin it all on Vayne for being reckless with the fleet. As they seek to pit Larsa against Vayne, they call back Vayne to Arcades for punishment. Meanwhile, Bosch says he's seen the same destructive power once before at Nabudis, in which a single division of Imperials entered the city, then there was a devastating explosion not unlike what they just saw. Given how the Midlight Shard was in Nebradia, it's likely something similar happened then, too. Ash decides to use the Dawn Shard to fight the Empire, but Vaughn points out she doesn't know how to properly use it, and Fran suggests consulting a race of people called the Gareth, who live by ancient customs and know much Magicite lore. Doing so, they learn they cannot wield the Nethicite partly because no one actually knows how to, including them, but mostly because the stone is devoid of power and needs to be recharged. They are soon met by Larsa, who urges her to take the stone and go to the Grand Kiltias, get ordained as queen, and stop Ondor and the anti-Empire resistance before Rosaria uses it as a pretext for war and Dalmasca becomes the site for yet another tragedy. After thinking about it, she agrees, and their next stop is Mount Baramises. At the same time, the remaining judges, Bergen, Zargaboth, and Drace, are divided on what party they are loyal to for the coming succession. As Bergen is loyal to Vayne, Drace supports Larsa, Zargaboth supports the Empire as a whole regardless of who's in charge, and Gabranth is loyal to the current Emperor, which puts him in Larsa's corner. Back with the group, their route through Golmore Jungle is barred as Fran is denied passage through the jungle. What this means is a detour through Fran's home village in the same wood. There, her older sister Yote says their younger sister Mirren has disappeared among soldiers in a nearby mine. Larsa knows nearby there are the Henne mines, so they move there where they find the dead bodies of Imperial soldiers and researchers from Dracolar Laboratory on their arrival. Mirren is spotted within, acting strange and erratic, and after they defeat a powerful dragon within the mines, they see Mirren with some sort of being possessing her. It leaves as soon as the artificial Nethicite shard breaks and she comes to her senses. Mirren explains she was captured by the soldiers when she got too curious following them into the mine, and was possessed as they poisoned her with Nethicite. Afterwards, Larsa thinks to take back the shard he gave Penelo. They return Mirren to the village, and gain an item that allows him past the wards in the jungle. Meanwhile, Vayne asserts that the Senate hates House Solidor in general, not just him, and they should silence the dissenters. As the group reaches the peak of Mount Baramises, they are about to ask the blessing of the Grand Kiltias on recognizing Ash's right to rule, when they are suddenly interrupted by a suave man of the ruling House Margrace of the Rosarian Empire, Al Cid. The Grand Kiltias acknowledges Larsa and Al Cid's vision of a unified Evilise and joining of the two largest formerly rival empires. However, Al Cid reports that circumstances have just changed and Arcadia cannot wage peace because Emperor Gramis was just killed. Over in Arcadia, Vayne is present as he claims the head of the Senate committed a murder-suicide of the Emperor and conspired with many other senators who are all being arrested. As such, he lays claim to emergency autocracy of Arcadia, and once more the judges are split on this. Gabranth is silent on this, Drace outright accuses Vayne of fabricating all of this, Bergen sides with Vayne, and Zargaboth stands with Vayne only because Arcadia needs a leader on this eve to war. The situation escalates when Drace clashes with Bergen, though he overpowers her with noticeably inhuman strength. Zargaboth is now charged with retrieving Larsa, relieving Gabranth, as Vayne knew Gabranth was just spying on him while he served the actual Emperor. He orders Gabranth to prove his loyalty by executing Drace, and he reluctantly does so. Back with the group, Ash is still firm to fight for Dalmasca as queen, and is told in order to do so would require the other relic King Wraithwall left, the Sword of Kings, which can cut through Nethicite. As they leave a shocked Larsa in the care of Al Cid and the Grand Kiltias, their journey takes them next to the still shrine of Miriam. After meeting and defeating a fiery warden at the shrine, they then encounter the Esper of Water Mateus, and defeat her to gain her servitude as a summon. As they make their way to the legendary blade, Ash claims the heavy sword of kings, and Vaughn suggests testing its effect on the defunct Dawn Shard. While she makes a last-second decision not to split the stone, Fran notes the stone seems more docile now. As they leave the shrine, they note another Imperial fleet, headed by Judge Zargabov, flies away from the direction of the smoking Mount Baramises peak. Their fears confirmed. When they arrive, they find the place in ruins, and Judge Berrigan there just having slain the Grand Kiltias. Behind him, they see Berrigan is also possessed by a phantasm through a piece of manufactured nethicite, like Murin was before. As they clash with the Judge, fervently loyal to Vayne Solidor, they win, and the nethicite he implanted all along his body ruptures and breaks down. After the fight, Alcid limps in, explaining that all three judges came here to tear things up, and it was Gabrant that went off with Larza. He asks Ash to come back with him to Rosaria to convince their leaders not to respond to all this provocation with war. Ash has to refuse him as she still needs to end the Dusk Shard Vayne has first, and Balthier believes he knows where the stone truly is, in Draclor Laboratories in Arcades, the capital of Arcadia. As Arcadia's navy and air force are mobilizing for war, the group chooses to sneak into the city on foot. As they get closer, Balthier questions Ash if she will really destroy the Dusk Shard or return it to Dalmasca and use its power. He further elaborates that she reminds him of his father, who once suddenly became obsessed with the power of nethicite, and so he researched it, mumbled constantly about someone called Vana, invented airships that can fly in the Yugd, gained notoriety, and even made him a minor judge. Balthier didn't want that life and left it, and his power-hungry father, Dr. Sid of Draclor Laboratories. He reveals all this to give her a warning not to walk the same path. As they enter through Old Arcades, the poor and destitute corner of the city, they make their way up to the Imperial City proper. Even Vaughn, with his hatred of the Empire, is impressed by the grandeur of it all. Using Balthier's underworld connections to get into Draclor Labs, they make their way to Sid's office, and find they are not the first intruders on the scene. Taking advantage of the confusion, they find Sid, and are nearly attacked by his attacker, though they sort it out and go straight for the Doctor together. Sid recognizes the princess, and they see him talking to some unseen presence as he attacks them with his latest nethicite weaponry. During the fight, they see Sid is protected by another phantasm, the one he calls Mana, and he taunts them by showing them Dawn Shard and Midlight Shard in his grasp, while leaving and going to Guru Vagan, where he claims another stone lies. Their newfound ally is Redis, another sky pirate and leader of the anti-Empire resistance, and as they leave Arcades, Andor leads a fully funded resistance army to engage the Empire. Redis reveals Andor seeks the Midlight Shard and wants to use it to defeat the Empire, but will request Rosarian aid if they cannot secure it. Bosch objects and asserts that if Andor has both the Resistance and Rosaria on the field at once, then Vayne, who does have weaponized nethicite, will crush both at once. Balthier points out Sid has the weaponized stone, not Vayne, and if they stop Sid, they stop Vayne's decisive advantage. The group decides to go for Sid, and Redis chooses to investigate another lead, and he too warns Ash not to induce another Nabudi's disaster with her nethicite. As they make it to the ancient city of Garabagan, Ash continues to see the ghost of Rossler, though Vaughn no longer can. As they descend the depths of the city, they find an impossibly colossal piece of nethicite, which even Ash finds himself wondering the amount of sheer power it contains. Beyond, they battle and capture the Esper Shem Hazai, and Ash finds herself spirited away to speak with the Akuria, the most powerful beings that exist in Evilise, and they direct her to the Suncrest, the mother of nethicite from which King Wraithwall's treasures are actually just small chips scraped from it. They entreat her to save Evilise and grant her a new sword, the Treaty Blade, which ordains Ash as the new chosen one to destroy Vana, a rogue Akurian they want killed for disobeying their rules of selected enlightenment, as well as Arcadia, whom he patrons. Though she takes the sword, she is still unsure of committing to the task of revenge. The group wonders why Sid still isn't here yet, and Balthier realizes they've taken his bait. After all, Sid had no way into Garabagan like they did, and so he used them to obtain the Treaty Blade. At the same time, Sid indeed is still in Arcades with Vayne and Larza is still suing for peace. Vayne insists Ash will wage war herself, and they both ask the Brand to seek out Ash and ascertain what her motives are. Vana makes its appearance to praise both Sid and Vayne, and in the meanwhile, the party thinks to ask Redis what his lead was as they search for the Suncrest. When they return, they wonder that if they find the Suncrest, whether they should break it and end the power of the nethicite, or cut a new shard for themselves to wield. Vaughn asks about a clue the Akuria said as to where the Suncrest is, and Redis recognizes it as the lead he was following, but it turns out to be beyond a Yugg. He tosses in a Skystone taken from Sid's lab that the Empire ship used to fly in Yuggs, and offers them to come along as they trek into the Suncrest. When questioned why, he answers it's because of the Nabudi's tragedy, and so the group uses the new Sunstone in the Strahl to fly to the Pharos Lighthouse. As they move inward, Balthier forebodingly tells Vaughn that should something happen to him, Vaughn can have the straw, just in case Balthier should end up doing something dramatic. As they ascend the incredibly high tower, they defeat 3 guardian beasts within, and afterwards, fight and gain the servitude of the Esper Hashmal. As they pass all trials, they make their way to the legendary Suncrist, and the time has come for a decision. In one hand, she has the blade once used to carve power from the Suncrist, but she chooses to hold up her new treaty blade and approach the crystal. Judge Gabranth steps out and urges her to use the crystal for revenge, and confesses it was really him who posed as Bosch and killed King Romanus years ago. His approach is blocked by Redis, who reminds Gabranth that once Judge Magister Zect took the Midlight Shard in Nabudis and used it, accidentally destroying Nabradia's capital city. This was also an order of Cid to learn the power of Nethicite, and since then he, once Judge Zect himself, swore never to see Nethicite used that way again. Ash chooses to let go of her past, Rossler, and mass murder for the sake of revenge, and cuts down the ghost of Rossler, who turns out was just a fabrication of the Acuria to string her along. She vows to break the Suncrist, and Bosch now faces down his brother, fighting and matching his strength. At this moment, Cid comes out and reminds Gabranth he was to observe the princess and not overstep these bounds, and thus dismisses him. Gabranth attempts to strike Cid, but Vanna's power flings him away effortlessly. Cid agrees with Ash's move to ignore the Acurians, but urges her not to destroy the Suncrist in the name of human progress. Balthier stands forward to stop his father, but Cid even calls him out by his real name, Famren, to express his disappointment. Discharging his newest weaponry, Cid sets up to power up the mighty sky fortress Bahamut, and even calls forth his own Esper, Famfrey, and continues the artillery assault. Winning the Esper from him, they defeat the Doctor, and as he dissolves in a mist, Cid has no regrets of his 6-year partnership with Vanna, as it too takes its leave. The Suncrist now surges out of control, and as Ash struggles to get close to destroy it, Redis takes the old sword of the king from her and charges ahead as the party escapes, atoning for his crime in Nabudis by destroying the Suncrist and blowing up with it. The effects are felt all around the world, and all Cid comes in to unfortunately tell them he was unsuccessful in preventing war, and several of his country's generals ignore him and join Andor's fleet to attack the Arcadian Emperor over Old Nabradia and Dalmasca. Though Rosaria plans to use this intentional incident and use Andor's resources before their own, Vayne will still crush them despite losing the Dust Shard. Reason being, Cid did succeed in powering up Bahamut, though thankfully the destruction of the Suncrist prevented it from gaining much power. He moves to delay Rosaria's involvement for as long as he can, and the group moves to take on a partially powered up sky fortress, Bahamut. Regardless, the power is still plenty strong enough, as Vayne himself is in the fortress with Vanna at his side, and Larza still there begging his brother to make peace. A single shot from the fortress is enough to destroy an entire battleship, and Vayne has no intentions of taking prisoners, rationalizing any rebellion must be put out ruthlessly and definitively. Each side is primed and ready to go under this precursor to war, and as they release their fighters and engage, Marquis Andor cannot compete with firepower the magnitude of the Bahamut. In the midst of this, the straw flies in low and under to below enemy lines and into the Bahamut. Docking in the Sky Fortress, they make for the command center and gun straight for Vayne. They are met by Gabranth, who really did survive the blow dealt to him by Vanna, and as Bosch beats him once more, he urges him to forsake being a judge and go back to being his brother Noah again. The group then encounters Larza and Vayne, and Larza takes his time to finally give up trying to convince his brother with words and stand against them despite their difference in power. They clash, and though Vayne himself is a force to be reckoned with, the party still prevails against the iron fist of the dictator. Larza rushes to his brother's side, but is knocked aside, for Vayne is not alone, as Vanna possesses him to a monstrous degree now, empowered by the manufactured Nethicite within him. At this time, a wounded Gabranth limps in, and Vayne still cares for his younger brother, so he orders the judge to defend Larza. However, Gabranth does agree and complies with the order by directing a sword to Vayne. The Nethicite-fueled Vayne wields immense power, and during another bout of combat, Gabranth lays a strong blow against Vayne, which is firmly countered. Vaughn then lands a blow that sends Vayne reeling, and now Vanna interjects, allowing Vayne to retreat. Vayne apologizes to Vanna for failing, but Vanna corrects him, stating he wanted the Suncrist sundered, and closed the Age of Stones and the grip the Acuria had over man. Vanna now completely merges with Vayne, whose very wisps of power can tear ships from the sky. Pieces of the Sky Fortress meld into him, channeling an armor to turn this Vayne into a mist-fueled, mechanically winged monster. The party does not back down from this living apocalypse, and together the group of outcasts, Van and Pinello, the war-torn orphans, Bosch, the disgraced knight, Ash, the princess of a fallen kingdom, Balthier, the disowned sky pirate, and Fran, the forsaken Vieira, defeat the despot demigod. However, the victory does not end the war. Their clashes damage the Bahamut to such a degree it begins to fall from the sky, but the straw won't start up. Balthier and Fran set Vaughn and Penelo to pilot the ship as they go to fix the engines below. They succeed and the Strahl is off, where Dying Gabreth, Larza, and Ash quickly work together to convince the warring sides to stop their attack. Their words work, but unfortunately the Bahamut is about to crash and destroy the city of Rabanastre below. Acting quickly, Judge Zargaboth orders everyone to fire on the Bahamut as soon as his warship, the Alexander, rams it off course. However, just in time, they then get word from Balthier, who stole away onto the falling fortress, to quick fix the Bahamut and drifted away from the city. He succeeds in restoring power enough, carries out an injured Fran, and reminds Vaughn to watch his ship until he comes back as the Sky Fortress crashes safely outside Rabanastre. As the game concludes, it's been 1 year since the party split. Ash is coronated Queen of Dalmasca, and Bosch has taken up his departed brother's role as Judge Magistrate and Protector for Larza and Arcades to further the relationship between their two nations. Balthier and Fran return to take back the Strahl, with Balthier returning Ash's ring he took and invite Vaughn and Penelo over to visit them. As the game ends, Vaughn is finally a true sky pirate with his own airship and with Penelo as his partner, and they head off to visit with their friends and seek the next adventure. Final Fantasy XII has enjoyed the success of selling over 6 million copies worldwide.